Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, the preacher's going to preach on a jacked up life. You may be seated. A jacked up life. My name is David. I'm one of Jesse's boys. I believe that you will benefit from a short review from the pages of my biography. I have never met you personally, but all of you know me, or at least you have heard of me. I lived some years ago, to be exact, I lived on the BC side, if you wish to know how old I am. Can you turn the mic down just a little bit, please? The exploits and deeds of my life have been well documented in the Old Testament. You will know me by many titles, but I simply prefer to be called David. I was tempted at first to focus in on the successful, triumphant times in my life. I don't mind telling you there were many, but it occurred to me as I thought through this, it was not my successes, but it was my failures that drew me closer to God. So I decided that I would be extremely vulnerable and transparent with you today. Is it all right? I will share my glories as well as my glorious moments with you so that you and your family, as well as your relationship with your wife or your husband or your children, can learn from me, because I tell you, I looked good on the outside, but on the inside, I had a jacked up life. I've had a great life as a military leader. My career was perhaps the most celebrated in the history of my nation. Sometimes I hear you folk talking trash. We had a word also in my day like fly, mama, show is tight, foxy, Mr. Big Stuff, off the hizzy, I don't want to play with you. But I was known as a man of war. No one was better than myself in the art of hand-to-hand combat. I joined the Israelite army when I was a teenage boy, when I heard that there was not a man in all of Israel who was courageous enough to stand up against a giant called Goliath. Y'all do know who Goliath is, don't you? When that Philistine dog insulted the God of Israel, I volunteered to fight him in a one-on-one winner-take-all. They tried to outfit me in some of Saul's armor, but it didn't fit. I told them I wanted to stay with what I had been proven and tried, so I went to meet the giant with only a slingshot and a few smooth stones. I had already seen God use me to kill a lion and a bear while protecting my father's sheep. So I figured if God could handle a lion and a bear, my God would have no problem handling a two-legged giant. I believe if I've had any things and problems in my life, if God took care of me in times past, somebody ought to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he'll sure enough take care of you in the future. That was the beginning of my military career. For years, I practiced what you would call guerrilla warfare. Seeing the nations around us were much larger and powerful, we had to use the tactic of hit and run. We were successful at keeping our enemies at bay. We understood that it was not the size of the dog in the fight, but it's the size of the fight in the dog. my military career continued. When I became king, my military expeditions became legendary. I took 200,000 fighting soldiers, and we stretched the borders of Israel north, south, east, and west further than they had ever been or ever since. I was a military leader. I was a great politician, statesman. I was greater than my predecessor Saul because I decided not to go ahead of myself. I waited on God, and God put me in my position. You must understand that when God puts you up, can't nobody take you down. But when man tries to put you up, man will always take you down. Oh, I look mighty good on the outside, but I'm already trying to tell you I'm lived a jacked up life. Music was my thing. My favorite instrument was a harp. Some of my music has lasted up until now. Even when you open your Bible to the book of Psalms, it is known as the Jewish hymn book. Some of my songs have been published, but when you analyze my songs, you will discover the peaks and the valleys of my spiritual journeys. If it sounds like I'm bragging, I don't mean to, but when historians look at my 40-year reign, they said it was the golden age of the nation. Some men read history, others write history, but I made history. All of what I have said represents the public side of my life. Publicly, I was a remarkable success. I said publicly, I was a remarkable success, but privately, I was a resounding failure. I lived a jacked up life. I looked holy around others, but when I made it behind closed doors, it was a different story. Privately, I was a resounding failure. The most painful period in my life came through my broken relationship with my son, Absalom. My relationship should challenge each of you today with my son as well as my many wives. And I'm hoping today that you will go home, reevaluate your relationship with your family, especially your relationship with your children. My story is a typical of a busy father. You know busy, don't you? Busy, concerned about success. But while I was concerned about my success, I neglected that which was significant. While pontificating over the affairs of a nation, I had treaties to sign. I had commerce to establish. I had alliances to make. I was busy with the kingdom, but while I was busy, somewhere, somehow, along the way, I lost touch with my son. What happened to me is not limited to kings. It happens to a lot of busy parents. It happens a lot to those of you who live your life trying to make it better than it was when you were growing up. You remember that, don't you? Don't you say it as you were growing up? I'm gonna do things better for my kids. I'm going to get more things than I had when I was growing up. But there is no pain like the pain of being able to see your child but not be able to reach your child. There is no pain like being able to touch your wife or touch your husband and reach over there, she's there, but y'all ain't there. I was busy. I lost touch with Absalom. If I knew what was up, Absalom was leading a revolt against me. He had no ear for my counsel. He shunned my presence for years. He wanted my throne, and finally he took steps to take the kingdom for himself. Even now it's hard to believe that my own son was willing to shed my blood. I mean, you read in the news and you say, how can a son, how can a daughter take the life of someone who brought them into the world? I had lost touch. You are with your children today. Take a page out of my biography. Children don't do well when they have to grow up by themselves. There comes that moment in life like I had. I could not join the battle. My people said to me, it's not good for you to go with us. I got ready to go into battle anyhow. They said, you stay here. If half of us die in battle, they will not care. But you're worth more than 10,000 of us. If you were to die, it would destroy the kingdom. You must stay right here in the city. Help us from inside the city. Perhaps they knew if I had come face to face with Absalom on the battlefield, they knew I would not have been able to fight Absalom, but they were sure Absalom would fight me. So they said to me, you stay at home. So I sent Joab, my general. I said to him, divide the army up into 3 divisions. But then I said, but deal gently with the young man for my sake. Turn to your neighbor and say, but deal gently with the young man. Deal gently with the young lady. Deal gently with the family. I know you have no sympathy for these black boys, but deal gently with them. I know you see pants sagging, gang signing. I know you think they'll never amount to nothing. I know you see them as trouble, but deal gently with him. Because I see him through different eyes. He's my son. Bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. That's my boy. Deal gently with him. Every parent ought to be able to identify with that, especially parents with black boys. Y'all don't have to talk with me. Deal gently, especially law enforcement officers. Deal gently. That's natural for parents to protect their children. Sometimes, let's be honest, parents, we even shield them from the consequences of their own wrongdoing. Can I get a witness? Not realizing that we're hurting them more than we've helped them. When we refuse to allow them to reap the results sometimes of their misbehavior. Just the other day, a parent, the father of the son who was shot said, I wish I had trained my son much better. Whew. But as the words came out of my mouth, I was haunted with this reality. Perhaps my concern for Absalom was both inadequate and too late. I wanted Absalom to be dealt with gently, but my conscience began to work on me. And while my mouth was saying, deal gently with him for my sake, my conscience was saying to me, it's too late to be talking about dealing gently with Absalom. But where were you when Absalom was a boy? Where were you when Absalom was a teenager? Where were you when he was moldable by now? The die has been cast and the mold has hardened, but here you are talking about deal gently with him. But I understood in my own heart how difficult it was to deal gently with the enemy. But how do you feel? Or how do you deal gently when you are fighting for your life? How do you deal gently with a rebel when you are trying to save the kingdom? How do you deal with a crackhead who has taken everything? How do you deal with a child who steals from you on a consistent basis? How do you deal with a child who takes your car, wrecks your car, comes to your job, ruins your character? How do you deal with that? But I said deal gently with him. But Joab could not deal gently with him and save me. It was a no-win situation. If Absalom won, I would either have to go into exile or be put to death. If I won, I would lose my son. He would have to go into exile or be put to death. And it was a no-win situation for me, and so I couldn't go to battle. There comes a time in your life when you cannot get into battle with your children if you have not laid the foundation. If you have not molded the mind. If you have not touched and loved the heart, you will have to do like I did. I had to stand away from the battle. I had to just get news about the battle. I couldn't join the battle. I couldn't influence the battle. I couldn't control the battle or manipulate the battle. All I could do was wait. As I waited, the watchman cried, "There's a runner coming." The runner came and said, "King, the kingdom is secured." I know I should have been happy. My throne was safe, but I was not concerned about the kingdom. I was not concerned about my throne or the battle. I wanted to know, how is my son doing? When I inquired of news about my son, he said, "I don't know." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I don't know." I said to him, "You step aside. I have no conversation for someone who is running without news. If you are going to run, have some news." Here comes another runner. I knew he was dead. I knew right then Absalom was dead. I made my way up to the chamber room above the city gate. I didn't want anybody with me. I needed time to do some serious soul searching. I cried like a woman in childbirth. "Absalom, Absalom, my son, with God I would have died for thee." Even in spite of my shortcomings, I asked the question and said to God, "You could have saved my son." Here comes the lesson. God took the question that I had been asking and threw that very question back at me. Here is an opportunity, parents, and those of you who are contemplating getting married and started a family, listen. God asks me questions like, "David, was Absalom safe from your examples?" Y'all mighty quiet. You want to talk about safe? Was Absalom safe from your habits? Some parts of my life is not easy to talk about in public, but all you know, it's the Holy Spirit indelibly stamped it upon the immortal pages of the scriptures and broadcasted it all over the world about how jacked up my life really was. When I was 47 years old, I had an affair with a woman by the name of Bathsheba. It started innocently enough, just kind of flirting, catching each other's eye. Do y'all know anything about flirting? Y'all sitting there like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Do y'all? Come on, I need y'all to huh? Do y'all know anything about looking at a woman or know anything about looking at a man saying, Oh, y'all, I still can't. Y'all still ain't up in here, huh? You know anything about a woman passing by and she got that? And you say, my God, God has got to be a real God up in here. Y'all don't have to talk if you don't want. Ladies, when you see somebody looking like muscles in their legs and yeah. Don't little something, and then when you with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, your husband or your wife, and somebody passes by looking, woo, you don't. Y'all gonna walk with me now? But I was married, and it got a little bit closer to that, and things became complicated. The truth, it got out of hand. Turn out the lights. Got out of hand. And she became pregnant. Her husband, Uriah, was a soldier. He was away in battle, so I sent for him to come home. I came up with some trumped up reason. You ladies, I know you done heard a lot of that wasn't me. I didn't do that. That was somebody looking like me. Oh, y'all okay. All right. Brethren, the lady, I was just at work, that's all. Come on now. Come on. And so David comes up with some trumped up reason, knowing that he would be so delighted to have Uriah come home. And when he came home, he just knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Uriah would sleep with Bathsheba. And everything would have been covered up. But, turn here and say, but. Y'all ain't saying enough. Say, but. Yeah, but Uriah, for whatever reason, either he was too noble, suspicious, or on the down low to go sleep with his wife, he slept at the door. He didn't go in the room. He slept at the door. That didn't work. I came up with another diabolical plan. I sent him back to the front lines with a note to tell my General Joel, put him on the front lines, then leave him. I know he would be killed. Shortly after all of that, I married Bathsheba. I'm not proud of this now, but you know this was the way out. I married her. And so I thought everything would be covered up. Then God sent a prophet. Be sure your sins won't find you out. He shook his accusatory finger in my face, told me, thou art the man, confronted me with my sin, and I prayed to the Lord, Lord, have mercy upon me. O God, according to thy loving kindness, blot out my transgressions and wash me from my iniquity. Cleanse me from all of my sins, create in me a clean heart and renew within me the right spirit. I asked God to forgive me. God forgave me. But listen at this. I discovered something along the way. I discovered that divine forgiveness does not wipe out human consequences. Can I say that again? I said divine forgiveness does not wipe out human consequences. The truth is, I spent a lot of years of my life in the foreign country. I had rebelled against God. I was king. I wanted to do my thing. I could do whatever I pleased. I had 7 wives. I don't know how he did that. I've been trying to figure that one out. 20 children, 19 boys, and 1 girl. It's in the text. I went to the far country, and tragically, Absalom followed me to the far country. After a year, I repented and came back to God. God accepted me back, but tragically, listen, Absalom never bothered to come back. He enjoyed the life in the far country. And the sad thing about it is my children knew what I had done. You got to understand where I am right now. Children stay with you. Meaning children hear everything, every word, every deed you say. You can act all pious at church. You can smile all you want, but the children know exactly what's going on in the house. I had another son named Abner. My only daughter's name was Tamar. Abner burned with lust to have his half-sister. So one day he came up with this plan to get her over to his apartment. When he got her over there by pretending to be sick, he raped her. Then he threw her away. It's in the text. Absalom was Tamar's whole brother. He nursed his anger for 2 years. He waited for the right time, and during the harvest season when Abner was the guest of honor, Absalom had a mafia-type hit put on him. Tragically, I couldn't say anything to either one of them because they knew what my life was like. I lost my moral authority over my family. I had no influence to correct my own children. Isn't it a sad thing if your child can come up to you and say, but daddy, but mama, you did it? Why are you looking up here at me? Ask yourself the question, are your children safe from your habits? If your children were to walk in your footsteps, would they be walking in safe paths? If your children use your language, would they use godly, acceptable language? If your children visited your hangouts, would they be in a safe environment? Then God asked me another question when I asked him, why did Absalom have to die? Can I go on? Y'all don't have nowhere to go. We're going to feature anyhow. You ain't got nowhere to go. He said, have you noticed that Absalom's ambitions was a lot like yours? Absalom wanted to be king. It's in the text. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be king. All of us should aspire to be the best we can be. All of us should aspire to go to the top. Am I right about it? Before I became king, I thought about what it would be like to be king. But I waited. Told you to say waited. See, I waited on God to promote me to the position he wanted me to be in. By doing it God's way, I became king. Let me ask you, are you safe from your ambitions? Ooh, that's deep. Because I was king, I was doing kingly business, yet my son wanted to be king. The problem, I was in his way. He valued what I valued. He thought I was only interested in being king, so he decided that would be his goal. But in order to achieve his goal, he had to move me out of the way. He did not want to wait for me to die. Let me ask, are you safe from the goals that you have set for yourself? Did you hear what I just said? Are you safe from the goals you set for yourself? If so, what methods will you use in order to achieve your goal? And how many throats will you cut in order to be head deacon, choir director, or whatever? How many lies will you tell? How many people will you pull down in order for you to go up? How many folk will you step on in order for you to climb the ladder? Are you willing to lie, cheat, and steal in order to be important and have your name on the program? Are you safe from your ambitions? Ooh. didn't see it then. But Absalom was not safe from my ambitions. He inherited my desire for power and authority. Some of us hate our fathers. But when you look up there, you're looking like him, walking, talking just like him. Don't ever forget you tend to become what you hate. I'm not trying to get you to shout. I'm trying to get you to think. God asked me another question when I asked him, why did Absalom have to die? God said, was Absalom safe from the company he kept? Or from the company you kept? When you read my story, you will discover that Absalom shunned my face. It's in the text. Absalom would never come into my presence, but the text says he always stood at the gate. He turned on his automatic charm he had. And everybody who had a suit or a case that had to come before the judgment of the king, Absalom, it's in the text, met him at the gate. Absalom cultivated the company of the discontent. Anybody who had a gripe, everybody who had a grumble, Absalom made friends with them. While they were on their way up to see me, Absalom would tell them, now you know, don't go talk to him. He ain't on your side anyhow. Don't go talk to him. There's nobody up there concerned about what you are concerned about. Does that ring a bell to anybody in the church? Absalom acted like he was so concerned, and because he was my son, my flesh and blood, when they fell down at his feet to tell their story, he said, no, don't you do that. Stand up here like a man. So they liked that. Before I knew anything, Absalom had stolen the hearts of the men of Israel. Half of the kingdom had gone with him. Let me inquire. Are all the people you run with negative folk? You do understand that negativity gives birth to confusion and criticism. There are some folk that are so negative they object to everything positive. They see the dark side of everything. They can never see anything good in anything or in anybody. Didn't the choir sing? Yeah. But didn't you see who wasn't up there? I think I'll tear down one group to better my group. Today, Sister Jones sure looked good. Yeah, but that hat didn't go with that purse. Some folk never see anything good in anybody or anything, always looking for the negative and the underside of everything. Always pushing somebody down so they can look good. Listen, please listen. If you only run with the complainers, you will have a fruitless, joyless, miserable life. Yes, there's a lot of things that go wrong, I must admit. But on the other hand, there's some good things that's going on. God woke you up this morning. God started you on your way. God gave you that raggedy car. God gave you that house. You ain't eating steak every night, but you got red beans and rice. God has given you some good things. Can I get a witness up in here? Absalom was not safe from his assets, talents, or his gifts. Ooh. If you're not careful, you can be in trouble with your own talents. Nature fashioned Absalom to be king. He was tall. He was good looking. From the crown of his head to the sole of his feet. He didn't have no blackheads. He had long flowing golden hair. He only cut it one time a year. And he sold it for 200 shekels. That's like 75 cents. Folk would stand in long lines to buy it so they could use it for weaves. His hair was his glory. It was the envy of men and the attraction of women. Absalom was sure enough fine. But when the battle was being waged and his forces started to lose, he tried to get away. And while riding his horse, looking all pretty with his hair flowing in the wind, he went under a tree and his hair became tangled up in the branches of an oak tree, and his horse kept on running and left him hanging. How many of you have gotten in trouble and the person who got you in trouble left you hanging? Can I ask you something? What do you glory in? Are you a popular person? Can you handle your popularity? God has blessed you with a certain talent which no one else has. Can you handle your talent? Can you handle God's blessing? One of the worst things in the world is for God to bless somebody and that person not be able to handle that blessing with humility. You're blessed with a good mind to think, got education, got everything that you could want possible, but you can get hung up on your own hang-ups. I'm getting ready to close. So I made my way up to my chamber. I could easily have given my life so Absalom could live, but now that I live on the other side of the veil, God has shown me several things about how foolish my request was. Because I found out when your children stand at their moment of judgment, you cannot die for them. The best you can hope and pray is that you have lived uprightly before them. And if you have lived uprightly before them, maybe, just maybe, your God will become their God. Your Savior will become their Savior. And your El Shaddai will become their El Shaddai. Maybe, just maybe, when I said I would to God, I would have died for thee. God pulled back the veil and let me see, even if I had died, it wouldn't have done any good. It would not have changed anything. There was no gain if I had died, no matter how long I cried. I could have cried throughout all eternity, and Absalom would still be dead. But is it all right if I go into my binoculars? Absalom, while you were crying, David, while you were crying, God, let me look through the binoculars down the line of time. And when I looked through the binoculars of time, I saw somebody else who was crying. I said, God, who is that crying? He said, that's John crying. I said, is he crying because he's lost a son like me? God said, no, that's not why he's crying. I said, well, I'm crying because I've lost a son. Why is he crying? God said, John is crying because there's a search going on. They have searched high and low and couldn't find nobody. They searched the heavens and nobody has been found worthy. They searched the four corners of the earth and nobody has been found worthy. John said what he saw made him cry because nobody was worthy to bear the burden of sin and release mankind from the chains of dope, chains of poor housing, chains of depression, no jobs, loneliness, economics, lost dreams, broken homes, the blow of self-esteem, the cup of adultery and fornication, the pain of sickness, the darkness of death. Job was crying, for he could find no one to open the book. Then I looked and I saw someone saying, John, don't cry no more. I know you haven't found anybody, but there is one. There is one. Don't you see him coming? He's coming down through 42 generations. There's one who will die. And if my imagination can work with me, I hear God saying to Jesus, I have washed you and purged you because something is coming through you, David. David said, tell me, where's this one who is worthy to cover my mess up with his blood and to make me whole? Well, David looked back in the lines of time. You'll see him there, don't you? There he is getting off in a little town called Bethlehem. There he is saying to John the Baptist in AD 27, baptize me so that my Father in heaven can say, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. There he is opening the blind eyes. There he is feeding that vast multitude with a few loaves and a few fishes. There he is raising Lazarus from the dead. There he is raising Jairus from the dead. There he goes up the hill of Calvary, followed by a black man. He didn't know it at the time, but he became a co-partner in the plan of salvation. There he is. He gave his feet to the rivets. There he is. Gave his hands to the nails. There he is. Gave his mother to John. There he is. Gave his back to the splinters of that old rugged cross. There he is. He gave his head to the thorns. There he is. God gave his side to the spear. There he is. He died on Calvary. Didn't he die? Didn't he die? Didn't he die? Yeah. Didn't he die? But there he is on Sunday morning. Didn't he get up? Didn't he get up? Got up with all power in his hands. That's the God that I love. That's the God that I serve. Is there anybody up in here who loves the Lord? If you love the Lord, hey, yeah, woke me up this morning, started me on my way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope that you've learned from my jacked up life